Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and today's first rest day of the 2025 Tour de France, sponsored by Baker Tilly. Big shout out to Baker Tilly for sponsoring every episode of the Butterfly Effect for the 25 Tour de France, and of course the rest days here on Beyond the Coverage. So, what would I like to talk about on the first rest day of the 25 Tour de France? First of all, Ben Healy's wearing the race leader's yellow jersey. Tadej Pogacar, the best of the GC favorites, just behind the race leader's yellow jersey at about 30 seconds. So, throughout the first 10 days, we have seen some magnificent racing, especially on day one when it blew apart from VISMA bike. They started the ball rolling there at the finish. That split the race up, and we saw Jasper Philipsen put himself in the race leader's yellow jersey. But that led us into knowing that exactly the plan for VISMA bike was to try to make every stage hard in the first 10 days of the Tour de France. Now, when we start looking over at VISMA bike, we know that they got a classic team with Wout van Aert, Affini there, versus if we go over to UAE Team Emirates, well, of course, they're missing that classic rider to go head-to-head against Wout van Aert on the flat stages. They have Niels Palet back there. That's a good classic rider. There's no doubt about it. But the big guy, Wout van Aert, even a little bit off on form, like he has been throughout the 25 season, but did win a stage of the Giro, is a solid classic rider. That's why VISMA bike have been throwing some effort on the front. So we'll get into comparing the two teams and some of the tactics. But we'll start here with Beyond the Coverage talking about Jonas Vingegaard's wife, Trine. Now, we all saw the comments, and I wanted to talk about this earlier on the Butterfly Effect stages, but there's been so much action, so much amazing action throughout the first 10 days of the Tour de France that I didn't get the option to throw it in. When we go in there, the Trine's articles and comments about her husband, Jonas Vingegaard, and VISMA bike racing him too hard. VISMA bike team management is who she's upset at. She's saying that Jonas Vingegaard should be home more. Now, we've seen a lot of comments. A lot of people have been negative against Jonas Vingegaard's wife, and some, like myself, I believe I can understand what she's saying, and I'm certainly not negative. I don't 100% agree with everything she's saying, but I can agree that if a rider like Jonas Vingegaard can stay home and train and stay with his family and recharge his batteries, like his wife is saying, that he recharges better at home with his two young children and his wife than he would be at training camp. Okay, I never liked training camp. In fact, I despise training camps. I hated going to them. The only ones that I understood going to was the first one in January because it made a ton of sense to have all 30 riders from the team and the staff there because you can divide out all the equipment, the bikes, you can get fitted, you have the mechanics there, you have the sponsors coming so you can get your pictures together as a team. That made total sense to me because January is not that important. And I only just started training again in early January because I normally had 3, if not 4 weeks off in December going through the holidays and then started training in early January. I wasn't a classic guy. I didn't need to get fit until March. So some of the classic guys that have been training since November, December, some started late October. Then they trained hard in November, they trained hard in December, and they came to training camp flying at training camp. When I was with Lotto, when we're talking about 2007 and 2006, guys, I had Peter Van Petegem on the team. That guy had been training like a monster throughout the winter time while I was taking a break and enjoying the holidays. I would show up in January after a European flight coming from San Diego or Bend, Oregon, all the way over to Belgium to do team pictures there, spend the night there after a day, 2 days sitting there, and then jump on another plane and go down to Denia, Spain, where we'd finally start training. Now, if you look at the Belgium crew there on Lotto, those guys were training at their house. When we had the team presentation there in Belgium, they're coming over straight after over from their house, and they probably trained that morning versus I did a whole European flight over. So I hadn't even started my training, probably rode 3, maybe 5 days maximum in January, jumped on a plane, lost some time off on the plane and a day, if not 2 days, and then 2 more days in Belgium, and then lost another day flying from Belgium to Spain versus if you're a Belgian rider, you went straight over there, went back to your house versus I'm staying in the hotel. Once we started training, what I'm getting at is guys at this level, at the professional peloton on a European team, one of the best World Tour teams in the world, VISMA bike. If you show up at a training camp and the coaches are trying to get 30 guys all on the same page, it can't be done. I'm showing up there with almost 0 training. and I'm riding against Peter Van Petegem, who when we were going up the climbs, his cell phone started ringing, and we're doing 30 plus kilometers an hour, and he answered his cell phone and was talking while I was swinging on the bike, dying back there. Next day, I trained by myself, went out for an hour with the team, pulled off. After doing my first pull in the front of the peloton, went back to the front of the peloton, front of the team camp there. And after I went off to the back, grabbed a Coke and a Snickers from the team card. And the first time the right or left showed up, I snuck off the back of the group and did my own training for the next 4 or 5 hours. So I hated them. But what I'm getting at is that every rider is going to be different. If you have 30 riders and your name is Jonas Vingegaard and you're one of the best riders in the world, and you can get to the top form while you're sitting at home, relaxing, recharging your battery, I say let Jonas Vingegaard go over there. Now, you guys will argue, and you have a right to argue with me for sure, that Jonas Vingegaard is a 2-time Tour de France winner. So if the recipe isn't broke, or if it tastes fantastic when you're done cooking it, don't change it up. But we all know if you're cooking in the kitchen and you're making a fantastic dinner, you can change the recipe from time to time. We all know if you're driving into the center of town that there could be 20 ways to get to the center of the town at the same time. So what I'm saying is that when we're talking about the wife there of Jonas Vingegaard complaining that Jonas is going off to camp and then coming back not happy, which there must be some kind of chemistry happening at home where his wife is seeing Jonas Vingegaard come back and complains to some degree about how he's not feeling fresh and charged after coming back from the training camp. Now, of course, we know it could be the person themselves, talking about the wife of Jonas Vingegaard, that is the one getting upset, and that could be the article that she's writing, but she could be 100% right, saying that Jonas Vingegaard can train at home, recharge his battery, and still come into good form for the Tour de France. That's a possibility. So you have to think about that. You can't get lost that there's only one way to do it, because I can tell you for sure, I won a Grand Tour, and I came over to the Tour of Spain after staying in San Diego, California the whole time, where it was 95, 105 degrees out, and I was training fantastic, and went over to Tour of Spain and won, and no doubt about it was some of the best form that I've ever had throughout my career. And I pulled 390 watts average on stage 20 after 3 weeks of racing at a Grand Tour, pulled 390 watts for 40 minutes up Languru, and wrapped up the victory there at the Vuelta a España in 2013. So for sure it can be done. Everyone thinking that you have to be at an altitude training camp, to my mind, seems madness to think that all guys on your team need the exact same training. You just have to look over at UAE Team Emirates when we're talking about Brandon McNulty, because I've seen articles from Brandon McNulty where he says he doesn't perform well at altitude and he'd rather be home. So his wife could be right in that aspect. Now, if we go into the same article, and remember, the article's being translated from Danish over to English, so I don't know exactly how much is right, but let's just say if we go a little bit off this article and we say that it's 100% right, where she's complaining about the team's communication when we go all the way back to the 25 Paris-Nice, stage 5, where Jonas Vingegaard crashed. Okay, he finished that stage. Then he drops out the next day at Paris-Nice, and in the article she's complaining that she wasn't sent information about the concussion that her husband, Jonas Vingegaard, had. I don't understand this so much, because when I watch stage 5, and I watch all the big bike races here, that's why I have the butterfly effect, but when I watch that stage, Jonas Vingegaard was not seen on camera of crashing. When the cameras did find him, he's at the back of the peloton. He's at the back with my man Victor Campenaerts back there who's looking after him. But at that moment, it doesn't seem to have any signs, at least in his writing, that he has a concussion. So when I look at this article and she's complaining that the conversation between the team and her wasn't there and she needs to know immediately, I don't see the connection. If we just had a crash there with Jonas Vingegaard on the side of the road and you're the director sportif, you're not going to text someone's wife to say, guess what, he had a crash in a bike race. Do you know how many times the phone would be ringing if a director sportif had to text every wife after every crash in a bike race? At the Tour de France right now, the director sportifs could be on the phone all throughout the whole race. They do not have that kind of time unless, of course, it's serious. Now, when I crashed at the 2011 Tour de France and on the last flat stage there, yes, when I was knocked out, did Johan Bernal text my wife? Yes, he did. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time, but soon-to-be wife there. And Johan Bernal did take the time to text my wife. There's no doubt about it. It was a serious crash. I did not move for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes time on the side of the road, and when the official or the medic first moved me, they flipped me over and I was a rag doll. it's time to text somebody's wife. I don't believe this was the scenario that the staff or the director sportif would have saw from Jonas Vingegaard. It was not on camera, I cannot tell you, but when we did see Jonas Vingegaard, it was never mentioned from anybody, the commentators, or of course my eyes of watching Jonas Vingegaard at the back of the peloton, that it was a very serious crash. Now, of course, it could have been different, but when you look at the way Jonas Vingegaard raced throughout that stage, yes, he was at the back of the peloton, so she could have been asking herself, why is my husband, the number 3 best rider in the world, sitting at the back of the peloton on stage 5 of Paris-Nice? I need to have a text. Okay, I don't think you need to have a text at that moment if everything that the staff saw with the rider, Jonas Vingegaard, on the side of the road, if it didn't lead to he is walking around in circles or he is talking and saying things, repeating himself multiple times, or if there's some serious damage on a rider, there's no way you can get a text. Now, right after the race, we all know Jonas Vingegaard always talks to his wife directly after the race. I don't know if it's every day, but we have seen it many times. And all you got to do is look when we see Jonas Vingegaard warming down after a stage victory or stage placing or doing a high result where he's warming down there at the protocol tent. We see that Jonas Vingegaard oftentimes is on the phone, and we got to believe he's talking to his wife because we've seen the conversations. So if Jonas Vingegaard made it to the finish of that stage while he was in the front group, which he was, that he got dropped from, but he did finish and start that climb at the front of the group and then got dropped near the top there where we saw, of course, Jorgensen and Lenny Martinez battle out where Lenny Martinez won that stage. Right afterwards, Jonas, text your wife. If you didn't text your wife then, or you're showing some massive concussion signs where you don't know where you're at, which that's not what we're led to believe, because we didn't even know he had concussion issues until 2-3 weeks, I think it was probably 3 or 4 weeks later after Paris-Nice, that it was leaked out to the press that he had concussion. That's why he wasn't racing. So I don't like her bringing it up into the press there with the director sportif saying that she should have had text and there should be better conversations. I don't like the fact that she brought up in the press during the Tour de France that Jonas Vingegaard could end his career sooner because his batteries can't get charged and he might want to spend more time at home with his kids. Because if you love bike racing like I did, just change the plan. If you're Jonas Vingegaard and it's not working for you, stay home. Tell the team no. No one's going to fire you there at VISMA bike. There's no doubt about it. In my experience, yes, you have to make the January training camp, but if you don't want to do the altitude training camp and you're the number 3 ranked rider in the world, tell them no. That's all you got to do. But you certainly, if you're the wife of Jonas Vingegaard, you don't want to leak this at the Tour de France because you don't want the teammates of VISMA bike's Jonas Vingegaard not backing him up 100%. Okay, that's my take there. She's wrong in a little bit, but right in a lot of ways that at least if you're VISMA bike, let the guy try to train at home and let's see if he can make the Tour de France with the same kind of form. Everything we've seen is Jonas Vingegaard is 100% professional, regardless of where he's at, because that kid never puts on race weight or never puts on weight. He always looks like he's race weight ready, and he's always on form. Now, let's go into compare UAE Team Emirates and VISMA bike because we're 10 days into the Tour de France, and we have one more flatter stage in tomorrow's stage 11 before we start getting into the big mountain stages at stage 12. What do we got to look forward to from these two teams? First off, when you look at UAE Team Emirates, when they get into the mountain stages, I already told you at the classic stages, VISMA bike seemed to be the stronger rider, with Wout van Aert being the card that really flips everything. Jorgensen's a great classic rider. Affini's a great classic rider, there's no doubt about it. But when you get into the mountains and you look at UAE Team Emirates, Almeida was the difference that pushed UAE Team Emirates over the top of VISMA bike. Almeida crashed. Remember, Mur de Breton stage, he crashed at 70 kilometers an hour. It is a spectacular crash there. And now Almeida, who started the next stage but could not finish the stage after that, is out. That flips the degree big time between the two teams. But when we look at the two teams, it's still Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogačar, with Tadej Pogačar a nudge over the rider from Denmark. So that means that no matter what VISMA bike do, as long as Tadej Pogačar continues to stay above Jonas Vingegaard on form, when we look at yesterday's stage 10 tactics where Sepp Kuss would go up the road, Tadej Pogačar said, nope, I'm not going to fall for it. This was a maturity tactic right here from Tadej Pogačar that I explained in the butterfly effect yesterday, where Tadej Pogačar has taken it next level. In 2022, he would have followed everything. Now in 2025, Tadej Pogačar knows He doesn't have to care about Camp going up the road with Simon Yates in that break of 30. He doesn't have to care if Sepp Kuss goes up the road. What he has to care about and slightly be concerned about is Jorgensen going up the road. That's why we saw Tadej Pogačar covering that move. What he for sure has to be concerned about is Jonas Vingegaard. So Tadej Pogačar has to know if his legs are not 100%, you let Jorgensen go, and you let your other teammates, like we saw through one attack of Jorgensen in yesterday's stage 10 with about 26 kilometers to go. We saw Narvaez, and of course we saw Adam Yates back there pulling Jorgensen back when it wasn't such a crucial moment. But when it was crucial moments, Tadej Pogačar directly covered it. So when you look at the two teams, if Tadej Pogačar is spectacular going into the mountain stages as we've seen, well, all he has to do is follow, and then if his legs feel fantastic, we know the Slovenian will attack at some point in time and try to drop Jonas Vingegaard. But right now, in terms of the level of the team, so long as Tadej Pogačar stays with Jorgensen and Jonas Vingegaard, it's not a dangerous situation to be less in terms of overall team strength behind VISMA Lease Bike, because you have the #1 ranked rider in the world who is ahead of Jonas Vingegaard from VISMA Lease Bike. But let's go deeper into the teams. Let's compare the two brothers. We got Adam Yates on UAE Team Emirates and Simon Yates, yesterday's Stage 10 winner, who was fabulous yesterday at Stage 10. He was almost invisible. Throughout that whole 30-rider break, Simon Yates was almost invisible. He raced it tactically spot on. And when we're talking about Simon Yates, if I bring up the fact that in Beyond the Coverage videos before the Tour de France, I said VISMA Lease Bike won't win a stage, but to be clear, I said VISMA Lease Bike will not win a stage if they're backing Jonas Vingegaard 100%. So the stage yesterday, Simon Yates' tactics of going up the road was not riding for Jonas Vingegaard. What I said in that video is that if the team allows riders to go up the road like they should have done in Dauphiné, with Jorgensen going up the road and putting pressure along with Sepp Kuss and Ben Toulet going up the road in the Dauphiné, if they allowed those riders to go up, they could have won a stage at Dauphiné. That's what I was talking about. Now we go into yesterday's Stage 10. Simon Yates did exactly what I said they need to do in order to win a stage. He went up the group in a 30-rider group and he stayed invisible while Jaco Lula and Ben Healy's EF Education were big-time knuckleheads. Ben Healy solved the problem with 25 kilometers ago, put himself in the race leader's jersey, but knuckleheadism before that. So when we look at Simon Yates, though, was he racing for Jonas Vingegaard in yesterday's Stage 10? No. Did he start the stage getting in that group of 30 with the ideal of racing for Jonas Vingegaard? Of course. But once the time gap got out there, they forgot about Jonas Vingegaard up there. If you're VISMA Lease Bike, Simon Yates, he raced it tactically beautiful. Let everyone else run their batteries down low like Ben O'Connor and Ben Healy attacking early in that stage. He followed all the moves at the right and crucial times, and then he dropped everyone on the final 3.3 kilometer climb of 8% to solo and win that stage. So no, I was not wrong on Beyond the Coverage. I was spot on correct if you watched that video correctly. So everyone that left a comment, you guys are knuckleheads. Now, when we look at the two brothers and we go back to the original story, Adam and Simon, they neutralize each other out. I think both riders will be at about the same level. And I bring them up because I want to take you back into the 2018 Vuelta a España, where Simon Yates was leading that year, where Adam Yates was dropping off throughout the first early week and the midweek there of the Vuelta a España, but then came very good. I think that's what both brothers have tried to achieve here. Simon Yates won the Giro. He came in here at the Tour de France a little bit off form. He's been trying to get his form back up, and rub off the rust that he achieved, that he brought himself after the Giro victory and the 1 or 2 weeks afterwards. Now he needs to get the rust off. We're starting to see that with a stage victory of Stage 10. And we're also starting to see Adam Yates get the rust off when we saw Sepp Kuss and Jorgensen attacking yesterday too. So those two riders neutralize each other out, no doubt about it. We go a little bit further, and you got to start looking at riders with Tim Wellens and Thies Benoot. Those two riders kind of neutralize each other out. But the problem you start to see is Jorgensen is incredibly strong. So you have to compare Jonathan Narvaez with Jorgensen, and Jorgensen's a stronger rider than Jonathan Narvaez. That's why we saw the attacks when Jorgensen was throwing up the road. It's more or less Tadej Pogačar covering that move. So Tadej Pogačar has to do a little bit extra so he stays close to Jorgensen, because UAE Team Emirates don't quite have that rider yet to compare with Jorgensen. we might see Adam Yates come back up to that level of Jorgensen, and he might have to do that move of covering Jorgensen more often so Tadej Pogačar can sit behind. But at this moment, Tadej Pogačar, the Slovenian, is so good, he can cover, and when he covers on the steeper climbs, it's not really hurting your legs if you're covering the tech immediately. The most important thing that Tadej Pogačar does not want to have happen is to have Jorgensen get up the road, have Sepp Kuss, my man Victor Campenaerts, or Simon Yates up the road that can drop back, and then Tadej Pogačar and UAE team members have to do a lot of work back there while Jonas Vingegaard's sitting on back there. But keep in mind, even if they have to, as long as UAE team members Domestiques can keep Tadej Pogačar close, if it comes up to a summit finish, Tadej Pogačar, as long as it's close, can bridge the gap. But while he's bridging the gap, he's going to have Jonas Vingegaard from VISMA Lease Bike sitting on his wheel. And that's what Jumbo-Visma are trying to achieve when we see Jorgensen going up the road. They're hoping to get that gap. They're hoping to have that satellite rider up there. And then they're hoping that when you go back and look at UAE team members, Jonathan Narvaez and, of course, Adam back there, that those two riders cannot bring back Jorgensen because Visma Lease Bike have help up there with satellite riders. We go back and look at UAE team members. Again, Almeida's out. That was a big crucial moment. I told you guys that might make this racing more exciting. But now we look at stage 10 and we see Sivakov getting dropped on the second climb. That's another big hit. Sivakov, if he's sick and drops out of the Tour de France, it's going to start having some effect. But of course, if Tadej Pogačar continues to race intelligently, and by giving away the race leader's yellow jersey yesterday to Ben Healy from EF Education, that means they have a little bit more help. But Visma Lease Bike are going to continue the same tactics throughout the Tour de France here. Okay, should be an exciting mountain stage coming up on stage 12. Tomorrow, of course, one for the sprinters. Like and subscribe. I'm going to call it up here on the Butterfly Effect, brought to you by Baker Tilly. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.